In this lecture, we'll be looking at the geography of East Asia. One of the reasons I like to do some geography in the history courses is in part to fill in some gaps in knowledge, but also to kind of reflect on how geography has shaped history in the various regions that we are examining. Briefly, let's talk about some of the seas. The Sea of Japan, which is between the Korean Peninsula and the islands of Japan. There's very little tide here due to the nearly total enclosure from the Pacific. At one point in geological history, the Sea of Japan was once a landlocked sea when a land bridge to East Asia existed. And if you consider the islands of Japan and how they stretch from the south to the north, you can see almost how that land bridge would have been. The Yellow Sea, which if you'll note is on the left-hand side of the image, the northernmost part of the East China Sea. It is located between mainland China and the Korean Peninsula. It's about the size of the state of Montana, if you're looking for some perspective. The name of the Yellow Sea refers to the sand particles from the Gobi Desert sandstorms that make the surface of the water somewhat yellow in color. Here's an image of a surfer in the Yellow Sea, and you can see the yellowish tint that gives the sea its name. The Yellow River, the Huang, it's about 3,400 miles in length. It's the second longest river in China and the sixth longest river in the world. It's yellow, again, due to sediment. This muddy water in the lower course of the river arises from loess deposits, L-O-E-S-S, being carried downstream. And there's an image on the right-hand side that shows you the yellowish tint of the river. The Yellow River is sometimes referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization, as most of the major societies in Chinese history could be found in the basin of the Yellow River. Here's another image, the Yellow River, beautiful colors. The Yangtze River, also known in China as the Chang, just under 4,000 miles in length. It is the longest river in Asia and the third longest river in the world. The Yangtze drains approximately 1/5 of China's land area, and the river basin of the Yangtze River is home to approximately 1/3 of China's population in the modern world. It's also a physical and cultural dividing line between the north and the south of China. Chinese people north of the Yangtze speak dialects of Mandarin. Most provinces south of the river, though, speak Sinitic languages that are unintelligible to Mandarin speakers or people who speak dialects of Mandarin. Here is a picture of the Yangtze, Chang. The Pearl River, or what is known in China as the Jiang, about 1,500 miles in length, so it's the third longest river in China. It's named that way because of pearl-colored shells at the bottom of the river in a section that flows through the city of Guangzhou, which you can just barely make out in this map. To the lower right-hand side, Guangzhou was once known to English speakers as Canton. Today, it's one of the most polluted waterways in the world, with heavy industrial runoff and agricultural runoff. Here's an image of the Pearl River. It's a very wide river at its mouth, and you can see Guangdong in the distance. The Mekong River is the 10th longest river in the world, the 7th longest in Asia, at a little over 3,000 miles. The name of the Mekong River is from the Thai language, and it translates roughly as Mother of Water. The source of the river is in the Tibetan Plateau. There's extreme seasonal variations in its flow, and the presence of numerous rapids and waterfalls make navigation extremely difficult, even for smaller vessels. And there are considerable stretches of the river that are not navigable to larger commercial vessels whatsoever. Here's another image of the Mekong River, and this one shows you some of those rapids, and again, seasonal variations. During flood times, you can travel larger sections of it, and then during the dry season, very few sections of the river can be traversed except by the smallest of craft. The Gobi Desert is an important landform in East Asia. It's the 5th largest desert in the world. It's the largest desert in Asia. Much of the Gobi, despite the commercials that have been shot there, is not particularly sandy but covered with bare rock. Extreme variance in temperatures. It can go from as cold as 45 degrees below zero Fahrenheit to over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Temperatures also, interestingly, can vary by as much as 95 degrees Fahrenheit per day. So in the case of a very hot day, upwards of 120 degrees, and in the night approaching freezing on the Fahrenheit scale. There's extreme desertification happening here. Approximately 1,400 square miles of grassland are overtaken every year by the Gobi Desert. To put that in perspective, many American counties are in the range of 400 to about 700 square miles, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 counties of grassland get overtaken each year by the Gobi Desert. The modern nation of China is building what they refer to as the Green Wall of China, expected to be completed about the year 2050. It's essentially nearly 3,000 miles of new trees that are being planted. They're sort of adding forest to try to stave off the expansion of the Gobi Desert. Whether they'll be successful or not remains to be seen. I know that 20 to 30% of the trees they've already planted have died, but this is a massive project to try to stem the growth and the expansion of the Gobi Desert eastward into what is better agricultural lands. The mountains of East Asia, I'm more concerned here that you understand the big picture, which is that there's a ring of mountains to the north, northwest, west, and southwest portions of what's traditionally been China that have served to sort of insulate and isolate China from the west, the Altai, the Tian Shan, the Pamir, and the Himalaya. And they've had a significant effect on Chinese history by sort of it is difficult to cross, for one thing, and the Chinese have never really considered the far west to be sort of an exposed border. So they've culturally and politically been rather isolated because of these mountains. The Tibetan Plateau, sometimes called the roof of the world, is the world's highest and largest plateau. For a point of comparison, it's about 4 times the size of France, the nation of France. The average elevation approaches about 15,000 feet. Interestingly, all of the world's 14 largest peaks over 26,000 feet are found in this region. Human habitation, despite the fact that at times the climate and human existence can be very difficult. Human habitation has been a feature of the plateau for at least 30,000 years, and perhaps, according to some archaeologists and paleontologists, humans may have lived there for over 100,000 years. It is also the source of many of the rivers of East Asia, as we have seen already. The monsoon seasons affect snowfall, which converts to water and eventually becomes rivers that flow to the south, east. Manchuria, I'm more interested that you know where it is and why it's important. A distinct ethnic group called the Manchu were originally from this region. It is in northeastern modern-day China, so bordering up against Russia and Mongolia. Brief overview of some landforms. Many areas in East Asia are either too dry or too cold to be useful to humans. People in the region have had to be especially innovative in creating space for agriculture and for human existence. A couple of quick landforms to discuss. The Los Plateau. This is actually it's a German word, and it means simply enough loose, and it refers to very loose sediment that's easily blown away. The loose plateau, covered by fine yellow wind-blown soil, and much of it has drifted into former mountain valleys. The North China Plain, which you can see to your lower right-hand side, is the largest, most populous section of flat and cultivatable land in China. Finally, the Yunnan Guizhou Plateau in the lower left-hand side of the image, a very rough landscape with deep folded mountains. The lower parts of the Yunnan Guizhou Plateau are characterized by what are known as karst deposits, K-A-R-S-T, which will be our next slide. Karst topography, these are geologic formations. They are typically shaped by the dissolving of layers of soluble bedrock. Usually this rock is something like, it's a carbonate rock. Sorry, that's a Star Wars reference there. A carbonate rock, such as limestone or dolomite. Water will trickle down and erode this limestone or dolomite rock and create some very beautiful landforms. Of course, it's very difficult to grow crops on a formation like this, but that brings to a close our brief look at the geology of East Asia. One last overview before we close, giving you a picture, a geological and geographical picture of the terrain of China. And you can see there's a great deal of territory that is ill-suited for growing crops, and most of that is somewhere near the lower reaches of the Yellow and the Yangtze